Hi, hello friends. Welcome back to Night Court Narrative. I hope you guys are doing fantastic today. As always, I am Elvish. Hello. My gosh, I went crazy today, by the way. I went absolutely bonkers. So, before we get into it, super small. Man, the last 2 months have been so overly stressful. So just reading in general has really become a chore. And, I never wanted it to be that way because I love reading. But man, I just have not had a chance to read. And I have a reading goal that I really want to get through. So today, I don't know what happened. But today, my little ass had a light under it, and I was like, you know what? Or I guess like a fire. I was gonna say lighter. My little ass had a fire under it, and man, I got 3 books done today. One of which was a novella, and all 3 are going to be recorded. So I'm actually doing 3 videos today. But holy crap, I have no idea what happened, but I guess I had just missed reading so much that I literally just sprout every book known to man out of my ass. And yeah, so today I am very, very, very glad to finally be reading this series, but we are discussing Loki, Where Mischief Lies. This is a part of, I would say, like the Marvel universe, if you know anything about that. We do follow Loki. He is a little bit younger. I want to say this is quite a bit, at least like maybe 200 years or so before the Avengers stuff happens, or at least that's what I perceived from this book. But yeah, so, obviously we have Loki. He is struggling with his identity, his power, and the tension, being obviously second best to Thor. It kind of mixes Marvel with historical fantasy, which I did actually really like. I'm not the biggest fan of historical fantasy, but this one actually wasn't that bad. It was set mainly in Asgard, which, as you guys know, is where Thor and Loki are from. And then we are sent to the 19th century London. Yeah, it's actually really, really nice. So we have Loki and Thor. They are training and obviously being tested by Odin. Loki's talent for magic is, not really appreciated by Odin. He's really looking for the physical strength and the warrior out of his sons, and of course Loki is not that. I love Loki so much. He is one of my favorite characters in the Marvel universe. So yeah, Loki obviously constantly feels overshadowed and desperate to prove his worth. We do have Amora, or you guys might know her as the Enchantress. Amora, this is before she becomes technically the Enchantress. She is a young sorceress in Asgard. She does become Loki's closest companion, and she kind of teaches him a little bit about his powers and so on and so forth. But anyway, Odin does look into the God Eye's mirror. He sees, we don't technically, at the beginning, we don't get any answer onto who it is in a sense, but Odin does see one of his sons leading an entire army against Asgard, and obviously we do discover that he sees Loki, which I guess makes sense seeing how Avengers unfolded. But yeah, Loki and Amora end up going and breaking the mirror. Odin does send Amora to Midgard, which is Earth, and there she excruciatingly has her powers replenished until they are no more. So after a while, Odin does find some magic is being used in the 19th century London, so he sends Loki there to figure it out. We meet some pretty cool people. We do meet another young Asgardian. His name is Theo. He was adopted on Earth, or Midgard, living as a noble son. Loki immediately senses Theo's loneliness and kinship, and I do believe Theo is a part of the LGBTQ community, so we do get a little bit of representation there. This is obviously where like Loki's queerness is also explored a little bit. He does have a little bit of attraction to Theo and openly acknowledges it. But anyway, kind of moving forward, not too much more to go. Loki does learn that Amora is orchestrating magical deaths. There are a lot of deaths happening and no one can figure out why or where they're coming from. But essentially, Amora is sucking the soul out of the humans in order to replenish her magic, and thus is basically a walking serial killer that the feds are trying to figure out who it is. She does manipulate Loki a little bit by, you know, playing his resentment towards Thor and Odin. Obviously, like, calling him like the lesser son. At the end, we do have this magical showdown. It is pretty epic. It's kind of cool. But at the end, you know, she is stopped and Loki is sent back, where Odin obviously acknowledges in Odin's normal way, where he acknowledges Loki's win, but obviously like shrugs it off in like a cold, very distant way, giving truly no real validation. Theo does choose to stay on Midgard rather than following Loki, which unfortunately does leave Loki alone and isolated yet again, losing his, not only defeating his only true companion, but then losing the friend that he gains on Midgard. And, you know, the novel ends with Loki. Obviously, his bitterness is deepening into what originally his dad was fearing. And yeah, this kind of plants his seeds. This kind of like the origin story. This kind of plants the seeds of like where his bitterness and his villain arc comes from. But yeah, that was Loki, Where Mischief Lies. I truly actually really enjoyed this book. It was actually pretty fucking good. I'm not gonna lie to you. It wasn't... There were points of the book though, because as I mentioned, Loki is one of my all-time favorite characters in the Marvel universe. Book 3, actually book 2 and book 3 have my second and my third favorite, which is like wild to me. But it kind of gets to a point where every once in a while he'll do or say something that isn't very low-key in my opinion, but it's so minor that you don't really notice it, so it doesn't kind of like ruin the vibe of the book, if that makes sense. I didn't find this book too flashy, or I didn't really find like the writing style to be absolutely to die for, but it was very, very entertaining. I do think, which I mentioned this on Goodreads as well, I do think the narrator for the audiobook did a really good job as well. He did give Loki his normal everyday accent, which was so perfect. But every once in a while he sounded like Stewie Griffin, which kind of like turned me off a little bit. But like, it was funny, you know? It was hilarious. But I don't know. The only part I guess I will say, I did see a lot of reviews saying that this book was absolutely like gut-wrenching, knee-slapping, just comedy all the way through. I didn't get that at all. I found myself smiling every once in a while at obviously like the witty shit that Loki says from time and time again, but it wasn't like knee-slapping, and it wasn't life-changing with, you know, the wit and the banter. I definitely didn't really get that. know. I really enjoyed this book. I do think though, I have said this in multiple books. So not multiple. I've said it in maybe like 2 or 3 books before. I do really think this whole adding queerness into a book to seem relevant doesn't really do anyone any good, and I do think it actually hurts the representation more so than anything. And I'm not upset at the fact that they obviously allowed Loki to explore his queerness in this book, but I don't think that it was represented well. I think that we could have seen or like dove a little bit more into that, or we could have had a little bit more heart put behind it, if you will. I do feel like it was very half-assed, and it was kind of just thrown in there just to basically for the author to be like, oh look, I'm an ally, you know. And I don't necessarily think that that did very well. I do think that that could have been done in a better way, but obviously representation is representation, so I can definitely see how that is really good. Yeah, no, this book was great. I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I did only give this book a 3.5-star rating. I do wish we had a little bit more excitement. I do wish we had a little bit more climax rather than just straight. Like, I feel like the book was very stagnant all the way through. There wasn't really any like beginning, middle, end. There was very much book ending, you know, and I do feel like it was very stagnant all the way through. So I didn't really get that full on excitement like when we had the battle at the end. It was a great battle. It was epic. That was fine. However, there was nothing really building up to it. It just sort of happened. And I do think if we kind of built up the tension a little bit more and kind of made the anxiety build up before the massive explosion at the end, I think that would have definitely given a whole nother star, making it a 4.5. And then to make it a 5, like I said, I don't think the writing was very flashy. I don't think it was very world changing, but I do kind of wish we got a little bit more of Loki's wit, because, you know, Loki is very well known for being a smartass, and he's very well known for having a mouth on him. And although, like I said, we did get some of that here and there, I don't necessarily think it was up to Loki's standards. So I do kind of wish we had a little bit more of that, which I think in turn would have made the plot come together a little bit more, because I do think that there were slight plot holes in the story, but it wasn't enough to ruin it. So ultimately, I really do think a 3.5 is a really good rating for this book. I wish I could have given it more, but it is okay. It is okay. Book 2, if you guys are not aware, it is a 3-book series. Book 2 is about Nebula and Gamora, and book 3 is about my baby Bucky. So I'm really excited for this series. I don't know if you know, but Explicit and we have spent the last 2 weeks, as soon as we get home from work, we immediately turn on the TV, and we have done the entire Marvel universe, excluding the TV shows for right now. We're gonna go back to those, but we've done the entire Marvel universe from start to finish. We are 2 movies away from the ending. We kind of took a break from watching it, but we are 2 movies from the ending, and I was like, you know what? This is the perfect time to literally whip this series out. I've had this series on my schedule for the entire year, and I was like, you know what? This is the perfect time to whip this series out and to just do it. And I am so glad we started, because this is such a wonderful book. And yes, there's always room for growth, but man, this was a fun read. So If you guys like Marvel Universe and if you like our boy Loki, definitely give this book a chance. If you do end up reading it, let me know what you think. If you have already read it, let me know what you thought, because you know what? I'm very, very curious on how others perceive this book, because it was fun. I know I keep saying that. I'm sorry. But it was definitely a fun book. If you hated it, let me know why. If you loved it, let me know why. And you know what? As always, I hope all of you have a very, very wonderful day. I have 2 more books to get through, and I cannot wait. That 3rd book was Phantismo. But, yes. I hope y'all have a good day. Bye. Was that beautiful? I hope so.